Hi, my name is Brenda, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Brenda.
My sobriety date is March the 3rd, 1994, and I have a sponsor, and she has a sponsor, and I sponsor women. My sponsor is current with me. I have 2 specific days to call her so that I'm accountable. And, that's the spill, right? I remember coming into AA, and there were people who had a line just like that. Like, I got a sponsor, and they would go around the room because everybody was sponsored by the same person. Everybody would say that. And I would say, this place is crazy. But, I know that we do that for a reason. We have to let people know that what we're doing in AA and the reason why we're doing it. So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, the big D. And I was the 4th of 4 kids, the youngest. I grew up during the, I left my notes. I grew up during the 60s, right? So this was during the riots in Detroit, or as we call them now, the rebellion. Because riot is just too strong of a word. And it really showed me my position in life, right? My mother was a single mother, which is a weird story because my father lived around the corner with another woman. And, so we got to go through a lot of things together with our mother. And every once in a while, my father would come over and he would, take the boys fishing on the Detroit River. And I would get to go and spend the night with him and his girlfriend. Being the youngest, I didn't understand the dynamics of why he didn't live with us. But I knew he was an alcoholic, and so was my mother. So, it was what we did. Friday nights, people would come over to our house, and they'd play cards and drink and fight, and that was what would happen, and that was the norm. So I grew up that way. When I was 12 years old, my mom died, and that left a big hole because it was like my father came to try to take care of us, and he couldn't because he was an alcoholic. And he would leave and be gone for like weeks, or I'd get a call to come and bail him out of jail. And, the feeling that left me with, because I would go bail him out of jail, and he would put me on the bus, and I would come home, and he would go somewhere else. He never came home. And so it got to the point that one day he just stopped coming home. And my older brother went to the Navy. My sister moved out, and the younger brother was taking care of me. And we started couch surfing because we didn't have any place to live after a while. We had to move out of that house. And so we went down to the welfare office, and we, would sit there, and there would be people there who would tell us what to say when we got back with the worker. And they had special vouchers, because this was at a time when you had to sit there all day long just to get on welfare, and it was degrading to do it. So at any rate, we got on welfare, and by the time I turned, the thing about my father leaving was the older kids was doing whatever they wanted to do. There was nobody there to tell us we couldn't do it. So I was following behind them. We're drinking, they're smoking weed, we're partying. The house became the party house before we got kicked out of it. I remember my sister getting so high that she fell off the porch into the snow, and she thought she was drowning. And, we had to help her out. And so, I couldn't smoke weed. It just made me paranoid. So I drank with them. But at the time, I didn't feel like I was an alcoholic or anything. I mean, I probably was just too young. By the time I turned 17, I got pregnant. I like bad boys. And the guy I got pregnant by was a heroin addict and a low-level gangster, I guess I would say. And, every relationship that I ever had, it was always violent. We were always fighting like the Wild Wild West. And I thought, that was okay because I used to see my mother and father fight all the time. I didn't know that, that's not the way you have a relationship. So, starting out that young, having a baby and drinking, still not really feeling like I had to drink. It was just what I did to try to forget what was happening to me. And my daughter was born with sickle cell. And so, that was pretty hard. And I drank a lot. I drank a lot because of situations. My mom died. I drank a lot over that. My daughter was sick. I drank a lot over that. Oh, I'm getting beat up all the time. I drank a ton over that. It didn't start feeling like I had to drink until I turned into my 20s, right? I was like 25, and I would wake up and be shaking. And, when you go to talk, my voice was shaking. I used to say if it was like a cartoon bubble, you could see the words shaking because I just couldn't get stuff out, And so all of this time, I'm on welfare. I've been on welfare all my life. And, I think I got 3 kids at this point. And now the drinking is starting to have an effect. It's me waking up saying I need a drink, or me, having to do something and, well, I need to drink before I do this, and then it turns into, well, we're barbecuing. Well, I got to have a drink for that. I got to cook dinner. I need a drink for that. I always needed a drink for something, and I was always feeling like it was my nerves. I was just a nervous person, So I really identified with the guy in the book who talks about he went into the hospital because he had a bad case of the nerves. And that's, not realizing that it's really a cycle. I drink, I get nervous, I need more, and it just never ends, And so there was a time when I put myself in the hospital because I thought it was my nerves, And it's one thing to be on one side of the door and to see your kids on the other side of the door and then realize they've locked the door and you can't go home. You decide to go in, but you can't decide to come out. Somebody else has to do that for you. And so I did that one time. I said, no, I'm not doing that ever again. But the drinking had, become to the point where I wasn't available for the kids. My daughter would get sick, and I would say, can you wait till tomorrow? Yeah, that's what I would tell my daughter. I'll take you in the morning. I can't take you tonight, And there were times when I took her, and they had to work on me because I done fell out now, And so, I wasn't any good to her when I was in that space. There were a lot of embarrassing moments for her because I couldn't, be available for her. She likes to tell me, still to this day, the story about when I came to pick her up from kindergarten. And I was in the back seat of the car with my eyes all rolled up and stuff coming out my mouth. And she asked her daddy what was wrong with me. And he said, oh, she's just drunk. And I have passed out and OD'd so many times on alcohol that the local hospital, the ES people knew me by name. They knew me because that was what I did. I drank so much that I would pass out. And so being on welfare all that time, there was one thing that I remembered. My mother used to tell me that the only way I was going to get out the ghetto was to stay in school. And, I didn't think too much about that. I knew that I liked school. I was pretty smart as a little kid. And when I got older, I would take like 1-2 college classes just to keep going and to get the money. Let's not forget the financial aid because that was the driving force, And so eventually I had enough credits for an associate's degree. And when that happened, the welfare office said, well, now you need to get a job and I said, no, I want to keep going to school. I thought I could be a career student. But they said, no, you're on the government's dime. You need to get a job. And I said, well, wait, I have an associate's degree. I'm not going to go work at Wendy's or something like that. You got to find me a job that's more becoming of someone of my sort, And they said, okay. And they found me a job in the welfare office as a file clerk, which is not cool. No, not when you've been on welfare all your life and all the workers know you and all the workers know you've been getting beat up and they make fun of you because now you're there. It was not a good environment. But the one thing I found out was that all state people drink. So I kind of fell in after a while, and we took care of each other, When I was too drunk to sit at the front desk, they would put me in the back and work back there, And so it worked out for a while. But alcohol is a subtle foe. We all know that. It gets worse before it gets better. And that's what happened to me. It got worse. As soon as I thought that maybe, okay, I think I'm ready to quit drinking because now I got a chance. I got a chance at life. I finally got a job, and it's going to take me somewhere. I see a path up the ladder. Maybe I can make it. Then I was introduced to crack. And it was like running into a freight train. And the thing about it was, I went over to my friend's house, and they kept disappearing in the basement. And I'm a nosy alcoholic, right? So I'm like, what are y'all doing? What y'all doing down there? And I go down there, and that's what they're doing. And I'm like, oh, I'm a greedy alcoholic too. So I'm like, oh, I want some. What you got? Don't leave me out, And I did that for about 3 or 4 weeks before it dawned on me, because it was new. And there was so much stuff about it. Your hair's going to fall off. Your lips going to fall off. Everybody knows. And now they're doing drug tests at work. And And so it got to the point where I got real afraid that I was going to lose the job that I had just got. And I said, okay, I'm going to stop smoking this crack. I'm going to go back to drinking. Funny thing happened with that. I told everybody I stopped smoking crack. And I did. I thought I did. But I look back at it now, and it had to be my higher power, because nobody stops smoking crack. If you're addicted, you're addicted. But that's what happened. And so what that gave me was a false sense of hope that when I was ready to quit drinking, I could do that in a snap. I should be able to stop. It's not crack, right? So when the time came for me to stop drinking, which happened because, you just can't keep going to work smelling like alcohol and just it's coming out of me, and or going to work all beat up and telling people you walked into a door. All of that gets real old real quick. We went to the office party and fought right there on the floor in front of everybody, and he pulled off my wig. We were ugly fighters. We didn't play around. And so I became the talk of, the water cooler the next week. So when I again decided maybe I need to quit drinking, I was ready. I was like on my knees, I need to stop doing this, And when I discovered I couldn't do it, I was shattered. It was like, why can't I do it? And I didn't understand, and every time I would try, I would end up in the same spot. I would say, I'm not going to drink today. I'm just not. And by the end of the day, there I was drunk again. I would promise the kids. It's like with and without an oath. Everything that the book says, I did it. I tried to change what I drank. I did all of it. And it brought me to my knees when I realized I couldn't do it anymore. And at that point is when I surrendered. I said, okay, alcohol, you win. I'm just going to stay home and drink myself to death. Because I did not know another way out. I just didn't know. And so my girlfriend from work came over one day to see me. And she said, Brenda, they're going to fire you if you don't come back to work. And I told her, I said, you just don't understand. I got issues. I got problems. I can't stop drinking. And she said, Brenda, people don't drink like you drink. You drink differently than people. And I said, I know. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I can't stop. She says, well, if you come to work with me, we can find a way for you can get some help, and they can put you in a treatment center. And I said, what? What is that? New thing. She said, you got insurance. They'll take care of you. And I said, okay. So I went back to work, and they had me off into a side room of the office, and they were discussing my future in the big room, about what they were going to do with me. And they said, we will send you to a treatment center, but it will only be to detox. You have to get it. If you don't get it, we're not sending you again. We're not going to waste money on you. And in that room was a guy who I had seen at work, but I didn't know who he was. And they kept asking him, do you think she can make it? And I'm like, who is he? And it turns out he was in AA. He had on a big gold medallion with 100 billion years on it, you know. And I didn't know anything about it, you know. And so they told him, you know, if you think she can make it and you can help her through it, then we'll send her, you know. And they did. They sent me to, I had to go downtown Detroit. And I remember them telling me, you know, we're going to send you to Memphis. I was like, why? I'm not that bad. I don't need to go all the way to Memphis. And they said, no, it's a place in Memphis, Michigan. I was like, I didn't even know Michigan had a Memphis. You know, I was in my own little world, you know, in my little block, my little street. And they sent me there, and it was with the Capuchin monks, and the Kellogg Foundation was running this place. And when I got there, one of the founders of Kellogg's gave me a big book. I still got that book. He gave me his card, and the card said, don't drink even if your ass falls off. And I sat there and I read that book, and I saw myself in every page, and I realized that, yep, I'm an alcoholic. And it was a relief to know what was wrong with me, what had been wrong with me seemed like all my life, you know, all of the feelings that I felt, you know, was right there in that book. And, you know, I had something special happen to me while I was there when it was time for me to go, because I was afraid to leave, because I knew what I was going to do. I knew I was going to drink, because I still, you know, was having the cravings, you know, even though being there didn't stop it. All I could think about was when I was going to get the next drink. So I went up into the top of the building and was sitting there crying about not wanting to go home. And I had a feeling come over me that everything was going to be okay. And I knew right then and there that everything was going to be okay. I didn't know how, but I could feel it. I could feel it in every pore of my body that I was going to be all right. And when I came out of that place, I went straight to a meeting. I did not go home. They took us right to one on 7 Mile and Gratiot. I'll never forget. And I walked in there, and I sat in the back, and I slid down. And they said, is there any newcomers here? And for some reason, I said, I am. I didn't want to say it. My whole plan was not to say it, but something happened, and I ended up saying it. And at the end of the meeting, all the women came to me, and they gave me their numbers, and they told me, you know, that I was in the right place, and everything was going to be okay. And that's how my sobriety started. You know, it jump-started from that moment. You know, they came to my house even when I didn't want nobody to know where I lived, because I lived in a dump in the middle of the ghetto. And I told them I would meet you on the corner, because you don't want to come to my house. You got to go through hell to get to my house, I would tell them, because there was shootings on the corner. There was crack all around. My kids found a body in the lot, and we were living in hell. And the only thing I wanted to do was get my kids out of that. You know, I had to get my kids out of hell. And so I started on this AA journey, and they would take me to potlucks, and they would make me cook greens and do all this service work. And they would pick me up and take me to the east side, to the west side. Wherever there was a meeting, there we were. We were always together. And so when time came and I started getting a little bit clearer, I realized that I didn't need to be in this relationship I was with, married to this man who was always kicking on my behind. And, you know, I decided that it was time to make an escape, which is what I called it. I started planning. I got a sponsor who had got divorced so I could know how to do that. And she still didn't tell me nothing about how to do it. But I had hope, you know, that there was hope that I could get out of this. You know, I really wanted somebody to tell me what to do. I didn't understand that what my sponsor was doing was giving me a foundation so that I could fall back on when the shit hit the fan. Because that's what she did. She took me through the steps, and she told me, you know, about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and how I had to be there for other women, and that everything that I was going through would one day be gold for other women, so my experience can help them. And so when I decided to finally leave this man, I came up with this elaborate scheme that I was going to move to Lansing, Michigan, which was about 100 miles away. And I told him, I said, you know, we should move there, because that's where the seat of government is. And I'm working in information security, and I need to be there, and blah, blah, blah. All the computers are there. Well, this was even before computers. But I told him, we got to get there. So he agreed with me, you know. So I said, well, what should probably happen is I guess I better go interview for a job, right? And I did that, and I got the job. And then finally, you know, after all of our talking and discussion, I told him, I said, well, why don't you stay here? I'll move there, and then we can meet in the middle and try to find a permanent place to live. And he was for that, you know, and it was like oil and, you know, greasing the wheel. You know, every day I would tell him something different, you know. And then finally, I just said, you know, I think we need to separate because I can't do this no more. Now, this is a man who had a shotgun under the bed and would just beat me just because. And I was afraid. And when I told him, he jumped up and ran out the door. And I just knew that he was going to come back and do something. So I knew that, you know, I didn't want to drink. This was like the hardest thing that I had done in sobriety, right? This was my back is up against the wall. Am I going to drink or not drink? And the only thing I could think to do was to go out and buy a pack of cigarettes because I didn't want to drink. And I sat there and smoked those cigarettes. And I called somebody in AA, and they came and got me because I was afraid of what he was going to do when he came back. And then later that night, I came back home, and he was there. And, you know, I say I like bad men, bad boys, but they were all stupid, you know. And the only thing that he could think to ask me for was, you know, if we get separated, was he still going to be able to have sex? And I did like any good alcoholic. I said, you can get it whenever you want. It's yours. You can have it. You know, I was just so happy that that's all he wanted. You know, like, yeah, we can do that. You know, and I'm like, as soon as I get away from you, you will never see this again. You know, and that worked out for me. And so I didn't take a lot of time and wait. It was like that weekend, I was moving my stuff out. And we had a truck, and I had, you know, all you got to do is mention in AA that you're single again. AA men will help you move, okay? They come to help. And they did. They loaded up my house and got me out of there. And it was this one AA man in particular who did something for me that I wouldn't have never done for myself. He went down in my basement and got my washer out of the basement. And the basement had flooded and had all kind of sewage and crap floating. And I kept telling them, leave the washer. But he went down there and got that washer and put it on that truck. He said, you got kids. You're going to need that washer. And that's what AA men do for you. And so I went up to Lansing, and that guy that helped me with that washer, I married him 6 years later. And he's the one that told me that tonight when you give your talk, tell the truth, you'll get out of there sooner. That's what he told me. He's also the one when I first met him at a retreat when I was 6 months sober. He walked up to me, and I'm 6 months sober, so I must have looked a mess. And he said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. He said, well, you ought to let your face know it. I said, oh, I don't like this man. And it took me 6 years to like him because, you know, that's just the way it is. And so we moved up to Lansing. And so I'm going to tell you what happened now because I spent a long time in how it was. Now I'm going to tell you what it's like now. I've been married to that man for 22 years. When I was 13 years sober, I was working for the state of Michigan, and I was complaining about my job. And he said to me, if you don't like working there, why don't you leave? And I never had that idea in my life because I'm from Detroit. It's a union town. We work there till we die, whatever it is, in the factory, wherever, you know. And so, and not only, you know, was it that way, but I was afraid to leave. I'm used to working there. I've been there 17 years. I'm going to work there till I die, right? And so I had gotten that associate's degree, had gotten a master's degree, and was working toward a security certification that nobody had in the state of Michigan. So I was moving. It was like, once I got sober, it was like a snowball going downhill. You couldn't stop me. I was on fire. Once I figured out the path, it was like, oh, this is what everybody's doing. I don't have to worry about the people in the smoke room talking about vacations. I can take one. I might be able to do that because I used to ask them, how do y'all do that? Go on vacations, go see places. I don't know nothing about that. And so I started moving up this corporate ladder and hit my head up on the ceiling. And they wouldn't let me go any further, and I was complaining about that. So I put my name out there on monster.com, which was the place to go, and soon realized that I was a commodity that I didn't know I was. I had all of this education, and I was black, and I was a woman, and y'all didn't have none of that out here. So they recruited me to come out here, and I came out here to work for Nordstrom. They put me up in Belltown, and ended up moving over on Bainbridge. And I did all of that without even knowing the job that I was going to do. I bought a book that said how to do anything in 21 days. Because, I mean, I knew what I was doing, but I had never done this job before. It was like security awareness and training CEOs and stuff like that. And this is the girl who in 6th grade didn't want to stand up in front of anybody and give a speech, right? Now I'm just talking like it's nothing. But I did that because I believed in my higher power. And I've always believed that he put stuff in my path so that I'm supposed to do it. I can't say, nah, I'm not going to do that. You know, because where I came from, I didn't have any opportunities. And now I got all these opportunities. So fast forward to today. In that time that I moved the time that I moved here, we moved on Bainbridge. I wrote a book about all of that. I went on book tours, and local book tours, not like big time, just local. And then I backed my way into local politics, social justice issues, and Black Lives Matter. And then I got on the city council. And now I am proud to tell you I am the mayor of Bainbridge Island. Yeah. Which is a rotating position, and all council people get to do it for a year, but I just love saying that. And, you know, in the time before that, I did, you know, I've had so many blessings from this program. And I've had different lives, it seemed. I've been a mountain climber. I climbed Rainier. I went to Nepal and did Everest Base Camp. I'm an avid knitter. You know, I knit for anybody got a baby. I will knit for you. And I just love being a part of. Right now I think I have 6 or 7 sponsees because I can't keep this unless I give it away. Yeah. And it gives me the opportunity to just keep, all of that stuff that I had that was shame and guilt and all of that I ended up throwing up in that book, I can use that now for every woman that comes in my life, and a couple of men. I'll tell them too, you know, because, you know, this program, this disease does not discriminate. No matter where you are or who you are, you can become afflicted with this, you know. And the one thing I know for sure is that it doesn't go away, that I have to keep maintaining my sobriety, because I've redoubled my efforts is what I've had to do, because I've had new stuff come up, go figure, that really reaches back to all of the trauma that I went through, that I just buried and said, oh, I'm over that, but I wasn't. And it starts bubbling up, and you never know when it's going to come out, but it always comes out on the wrong person at the wrong time. And so I decided to redouble my efforts and get back into this program like a newcomer. And I got a new sponsor, and now I'm accountable, and I'm doing work. She gives me homework, and she wants to know, what am I doing with the triangle and the circle as far as the unity and the fellowship? And I have to think about that before I tell her, oh, well, wait, you know, because I got 28 years of sobriety. Nobody had to check me on the circle before. I was always in the circle. I was the circle. No. And so I have to think about it and say, yeah, what am I doing? Who am I talking to? Who am I helping today? What meeting am I accountable to? You know, and And so I do a lot of other stuff. I'm part of the International Women's Conference. I'm the co-chair of that. It's in Dallas this year. And if you want to be a part of that, it'll cost you $10 to do it online on Zoom. And you can be a part of all of the meetings there. Getting ready to pack up and go there week after next. And, you know, there's a lot of ways to get involved in this program. And, you know, I've always said from the first conference that I went to that I'm going to be a little old black lady in AA. And I'm going to be, Austria is my role model, right? Because I'm planning on being a delegate one day, and I still haven't given up that dream. No, I haven't, because that's where my retirement is. It's going to be in AA helping people. You know, I don't plan on walking away from this ever because, you know, as I've heard old timers say, you know, thanks is not enough. I can't just say thanks AA for this wonderful life. That's not enough. I got to do more. I got to do as much as I can to give back what I've got. So, wait, I can't get you back.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.